continue our series called In Faith from the book of Hebrews, Hebrews 11, which highlights a selection of individuals who are named in that famous chapter. We're doing that to see really how their character, their lives, and their actions still inspire and encourage us today, even hundreds of years after their stories happened. They're recorded in the Bible for us and are still used by God to spur us on in our faith in the good times and the not so good times. Excuse me. So, before we go to Hebrews 11, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background, a bit of a teaser, if you like, for the person that I'm going to be speaking on this morning. There are only two women mentioned, named in Hebrews 11. Ray has already spoken on one, if you can remember who that was. Rahab, yes, Ray spoke to us about Rahab, the prostitute who lived in the wall of Jericho. The other woman, who we are told was very beautiful, I bet she liked that, a beautiful woman who was faithful to her husband. She was willing to uproot everything and leave her family, her homeland, to follow her husband when they were called by God to leave where they were living and to go to some unknown land that God would show them. Traveling with her husband from place to place, she had to endure a severe famine. To survive, they went down to Egypt to escape hunger, disease, and possibly certain death. This beautiful woman, whose name means princess, ended up being taken into the palace of Pharaoh because his officials had been told that she was available. Well, I'm sure you know the woman I'm referring to. If you haven't guessed it already, she's got two names. The first one is Sarai. However, in Hebrews 11, she is referred to as Sarah. Just like Abram, her husband, God made a covenant with him and changed both of their names. Abram to Abraham, meaning father of many nations, and Sarai to Sarah. That's a quick intro to Sarah. And if you read through the book of Genesis, chapters 12 to 23, you'll find out much more about her story. But today, I'm going to focus on why she's mentioned in Hebrews 11. And so we're going to hover over Genesis chapter 18 in anticipation of what God is revealing to us through her story. So just as we turn to Genesis chapter 18, I just want to ask that question. Is there anyone here today who's at least 90 years old? No hands go up. 89? 88? 87? 85? I'll leave it there. We haven't got anybody Sarah's age here this morning. So she's not a young woman. All right? She's an old lady. For a bit of context, Abraham and Sarah have been on the move for over 25 years, moving from place to place. When they left Haran, Abram was 75 years old. How many 75-year-olds just suddenly up, stick, and move? I'm sure there are some, but not many. And Sarah was roughly 10 years younger. In chapter 18, they are now 99 and 90. Let's read just these first few verses from chapter 18. It's entitled The Three Visitors. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, where he was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw three men standing nearby. When he saw them, he hurried from the entrance of his tent to meet them and bowed low to the ground. He said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may all wash your feet and rest under this tree. Let me get something to eat, get you something to eat, so that you can be refreshed and then go on your way, now that you have come to your servant." "Very well," they answered. "Do as you say." So Abraham hurried into the tent to Sarah. "Quick," he said, "get 3 seahs of the finest flour and knead it and bake some bread." Then he ran to the herd and selected a choice tender calf and gave it to a servant who hurried to prepare it. He then brought some curds and milk and the calf that had been prepared and set these before them. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. Let's just think about this place where Abraham is, where the Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre. That word Mamre means the place of strength. To me, it sounds like an oasis, a beautiful place where you can be in the shade under some trees. It's wonderful to see Mark's prayer and reflection is all about rest and refreshment. And it sounds like this place is that kind of place. There's shade from the hot sun. There's water to hand, and they have plenty of food in their tent. It's a place of rest and recovery from their journeying. And these 3 visitors, they seem to appear out of nowhere. Abraham doesn't see them in the distance, walking towards his tent. He looks up from his deck chair and sees 3 men just there, standing nearby. And he seems to know immediately who they are. He doesn't reach for a weapon or warn those in his company. He doesn't feel threatened by them. Instead, he hurries to meet them. And he bows down low to the ground in front of them. Just as we were worshipping this morning, we were singing that song about majesty. I just had this picture of us bowing down before God, bowing down before this holy King. And it's the picture of Abraham bowing before these 3 mysterious visitors. Listen to his words again. He says, "If I have found favor in your eyes, my Lord, stay and let me wash your feet and feed you." These are the words of a man who has recognized who was standing before him. He knows who they are. He shows the deepest respect and wants to meet their needs. And they agree to stay. Then we witness this wonderful moment of hospitality, which is very much a team effort led by Abraham, involving Sarah and the other servant. Water brought for feet washing, blankets laid out under the trees in the shade, fresh flatbreads made with the finest flour, fresh tender beef, yogurt and ice-cold milk to quench their thirst. And once served, Abraham leaves them alone to enjoy their kebabs. He stands under the trees in the shade, watching and waiting should they need anything else. Now, verse 9 is a bit of an odd verse. It just says this. It's a question. "Where is your wife Sarah?" they asked. It doesn't say he asked, it says they asked. And I'm kind of thinking, is it like they asked the same question all at the same time in unison? Abraham doesn't hesitate to reply, but he must have wondered why they asked. Were they going to compliment her on her bread making, or did they need a toothpick to dislodge some beef from their teeth? Notice that all three visitors knew Sarah's name. They didn't have to ask Abraham, what's your wife's name? They knew already. They also knew where she was. They knew she was in the tent. So why ask the question? I wonder if they asked where Sarah was deliberately to get Sarah's attention to what was coming next, to what they were going to say next. They knew, surely, that she was listening at the entrance to the tent. Verse 10 then clearly tells us that it is the Lord that's speaking. It's got a capital L. Notice that. One of the three visitors stands out above the other two. And the word Lord here is the Hebrew Adon, which is from Adonai, meaning master, sovereign, highest power and authority, Yahweh. Could this be God in the flesh, eating and drinking, sitting under the shade of the trees? Then the Lord said, I will surely return to you about this time next year. This sounds like a Del Boy sort of moment, doesn't it? This time next year. And Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Notice here how God makes it plainly clear. Sarah, your wife, not Hagar, Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Not a baby, because there's no mistake here. It will be a son. Has God ever spoken to you with such clarity that there could be no mistake that it was him? That it was him speaking to you, either giving you a word of encouragement or an announcement or a set of instructions to follow. I feel like we're in a season where we need to hear from God. In fact, in every season, we need to hear clearly what God is saying. I like the fact that Abraham and Sarah have pitched their tent in this oasis, in a place of peace, in a place of refreshment, a place of rest. And sometimes in a place of rest, that's where God comes and reveals himself to us. He speaks to us tenderly. I remember the days I used to go to the hermitage just to be on my own, to sleep, to eat, to rest. And God would just come and bring words of encouragement, bring words of direction to me. When was the last time you were in a place of rest and God spoke? You got away from the busyness of life, from the stress, from the worry, from the anxiety, from the busyness of just doing stuff, just to be still and to be in his presence. We see it time and time again through Scripture where God speaks to his people. Let's listen to Sarah's response. It says this, now Sarah was listening. She had her ears open. She was ready to hear. She was anticipating what these visitors were going to say. Let's have our ears open. Sarah was listening at the entrance to the tent, which was behind him. Abraham and Sarah were already very old, and Sarah was way past the age of childbearing. So Sarah laughed to herself as she thought, after I am worn out and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? It's kind of a normal response, wouldn't it be? If somebody told you, if you were in your 90s and you were a lady and you were going to have a baby, you would laugh, I think. Cry, yeah. You can understand why Sarah had these thoughts in her head. She was 90 years old. They've been childless for decades, even though they'd tried hard to have a son, even trying to get a son through her maidservant Hagar with her husband, caused so much trouble. No wonder she laughed, wouldn't you? How on earth am I going to produce a son when my husband is 99? This is impossible. This is a when pigs fly moment for Sarah. Doubt, unbelief, shock, amazement. Whatever thoughts, feelings, and emotions that were going on inside of Sarah, the Lord knew. Even without hearing audible words or even hearing the snigger from Sarah, because all of it was internal. It was all in her head. She didn't speak these words. It says she thought to herself. She laughed inside. She thought these thoughts. She didn't speak them. But he knew that she had laughed and wanted to know why. God wanted to know why she doubted his words. Then the Lord, the funny thing here is, the Lord doesn't approach Sarah to ask her, he asks Abraham. Bit odd. Then the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh and say, will I really have a child now that I'm old? And you get this wonderful phrase here, verse 14. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Is anything too hard for the Lord? That's a word we need to hear, isn't it? When we face impossible situations. Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return to you at the appointed time next year, and Sarah will have a son, the Lord declares. Is there anything too hard for the Lord? That's a question to ask ourselves when we're faced with difficult situations, problems that seem unsolvable, when we need a breakthrough or a miracle. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Why don't you in this moment just bring to God the thing that's too hard for him to fix, to sort, to change? Why don't you just offer that to him right now in a prayer? Just say, Lord, this seems impossible. This seems crazy. Why is this happening? But I know, Lord, nothing is impossible for you. Sarah, of course, denies that she laughed. She was afraid, so she lied and said, I did not laugh. Well, actually, it's not a lie, because she didn't laugh out loud, did she? She laughed internally so nobody else could hear it, but God saw it and heard it. And he challenges her, and he says, yes, you did laugh. I wonder how Sarah felt when she'd been called out by God. Afraid, worried, terrified, bemused, hopeful, maybe. We're not told. After all, her husband was called the father of many nations. We simply don't know. The interesting thing in this story, which we won't read now, but the three visitors, after they make this announcement that this time next year Sarah will have a son, they get up and two of them leave to go off to Sodom and Gomorrah. But the Lord just stays and stands with Abraham. Just wonderful picture of the Lord standing beside us, standing beside Abraham, standing beside people to bring comfort. Skip forward to chapter 21. You don't have to do that in your Bible, but I'm going to read it to you. It says this: Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah. Yes, she'd lied. She'd tried to fix things herself by giving Abraham to Hagar to produce a son. She tried to manipulate the whole situation. But it says this: Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said. And the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. At 90 years of age, Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age. At that very time, God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son that Sarah bore to him. I think I'm right in saying that Isaac means laughter. When his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Oh, imagine getting down on your knees to play with a child when you're 100 years old. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. So what can we take away from Sarah's story this morning? Number one, let's hold on to the promises of God for you, your family, and for all mankind, even when they seem impossible. With God, all things are possible. We see from this story that nothing is impossible for God. Number two, let's make room for God. Let's be hospitable. Let's let God come to you in your place of rest to strengthen and encourage you. You never know what may happen. Hebrews 13 verse 2 says, do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. Number three, don't try to manipulate God's plan. Listen to him, and he will tell you clearly what he's going to do. He is faithful, and he will do it. And lastly, laugh and rejoice and give thanks to God when his promises are fulfilled. Maybe there's a promise that you've been given, hasn't quite been fulfilled yet. Be ready. Be ready to rejoice and give thanks to God when it comes to pass. Hebrews 11 is where Sarah is mentioned. And it says this: and by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. Let's remember, God is faithful. He's faithful to his promises. And so from this one man and woman who were as good as dead came descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as countless as the sand on the seashore. Sometimes we can look and go, this is dead. But not to God. Not to God. He's got a bigger plan. And if we trust him, we'll see miracles. I love this last bit from verse 13 of Hebrews 11. It says this, and I think we should just take this as a bit of an encouragement. It says this: all these people, this is the list of names that are in Hebrews 11, all these people were still living by faith when they died. They did not receive the things promised, apart from Sarah. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance, admitting that they were foreigners and strangers on the earth. People who say such things show that they're looking for a country of their own. If they'd been thinking of a country they had left, they would have had opportunity to return. Instead, they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he has prepared a city for them. You know, Sarah received her promised son in Isaac. She saw God at a distance from the entrance of her tent. She heard God speak. She was part of the miracle that brought about a whole line of people, tribes, kings, that God has used to fulfill his greater plan of salvation for his people through his son Jesus. Sarah didn't get to see Jesus, but her legacy still lives on today through Christ in us. And we have to ask that question, don't we? Is anything too hard?